Hey, listeners, we wanted to let you know about a special event that we have coming up that myself and Bob and a colleague of ours, Christopher Lafitte, will be doing. It's a healing workshop for professionals. Bob, what's the theme this year?
Yeah, this is for therapists, for anybody in the healing professions, and even people that are in ministry, priest, religious, anybody in pastoral ministry. I think it'll apply to everybody, probably most of the listeners to the podcast. And it's sexual healing our sexual wounds. So we're going to go deep into looking at not just the surface of our sexual wounds, but kind of what's underneath them, and how do we bring healing and restoration there.
Yeah, we're really excited to be able to offer it to these wonderful people. So October 23rd and 24th are the dates. It will be a virtual event, so you'll go and access it through an online course platform. To find out more information, you can go to the John Paul II Healing website. So that's jpiihealingcenter.org. And when you go to that main homepage, there will be some banners that are going across that are explaining about various events. And then click the one that says Healing Professionals Virtual Workshop. We'll also have that link in the show notes for you to check out. And we hope to see you there. God bless. Welcome to Restore the Glory podcast. My name is Jake Kim.
And I'm Bart Schuchts.
We're two Catholic therapists sharing what we've learned personally and professionally to help you on the journey of restoration. If you've been blessed by our podcast, please prayerfully consider partnering with us on Patreon. Your support will help cover the cost to produce the podcast, but will also give you access to exclusive content like monthly reflections and special live stream teachings. Go to patreon.com/restoretheglory and join the mission of experiencing the restoration of our God-given glory. Hey, Bob. Good to see you again. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Jake, and excited about our guest today, a surprise guest.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm not sure. Do you know this guy? I feel like you might know this one. Do you have some experience with him?
A little bit, yeah. I just, you know him a little bit too, but I think I know him a little better.
Maybe a little bit better. Yeah. So would you like to introduce your brother?
Yes. Those of you who are have gone to our conferences, either the priest conferences or our Healing Hope First conferences, or some others, I know my brother Bart. My brother Bart is 8 years younger, and we've really been on a journey together for a lot of years. And it started, our family was very sports oriented, and so it started way early in this topic of sports. And Bart's got a really neat story and had some great experiences and some rough experiences both in his sports career. So looking forward to having that shared with everybody. So Bart, welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Bart.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Thanks, Bob. Jake, I've known you a little while. Bob, I feel like I've known you my whole life.
Is that just a feeling? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it, Bart, when we get together, because you're one of the people that will join me in the teasing of Bob in ways that are like few other people can. Your capacity to tease Bob exceeds all of ours. But
yes, so I love our teamwork, Jake. It's good for Bob.
It is. It's good teamwork. I think the one I liked recently was you were like, "Do you guys realize Bob used to be totally jacked?" And you started to describe, and Bob was so embarrassed. And I was like, "No, Bart, keep going. This is perfect."
Linebacker Bob.
It's so okay. So this is fun for me because two brothers, like just a little bit of. I'm gonna go quick high level here, and we can get into all these stories. But your guys' family is pretty crazy from an athletic point of view. So just for you two, you both played high school football and basketball, right?
And baseball.
And baseball.
And track.
Then
for me, you didn't play track.
Okay, Bob, you ran track because you were a speedster.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you were a speedster with your shirt off, but then you both went and played D1 college football. And Bob, that to me is one of these weird things that nobody knows. And to have then now us be chatting with you, Bart, like that's wild that two brothers played, like
Yeah.
D3, okay, it's pretty cool, but D1 is hard to do. Like, that's a high level of athleticism.
Yeah. And our dad played D1 football. My brother Wayne, who's in between the two of us, played D1 football.
Did he really? Okay, so so give me so we're going to zoom in on football here. Oh, did you guys play anything else collegiately? Oh, only football. Intramurals, yeah. You were the team that were like, oh crap, we're playing the football team in basketball.
Yeah, when the Florida State football team, we had two teams when they played each other. That was always a lot of fun.
I can imagine. And then intramurals, I can imagine that'd be awesome. Okay, so just quick highlights, because for people who like sports and athletics. So Bart, you give us a little bit of your athletic career, like fill in some of those details. I just want high level collegiate. So give us a little bit of your resume athletically.
Okay. Let me start with where you started in talking about my brother, Bob. And I think these were I shared once when I said he's jacked.
Yeah.
So, he's 8 years older than me. And some of my memories of Bob is out in our street in Miami, no shirt on. And yet, like I said, he was jacked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, for those who don't want to know what that means, Bob had muscle upon muscle.
Yes. Yes.
And Bob would be out in the street. My memory would be out in the street sprinting. And from my memory, he was very fast. And I knew he played 3 sports. And then Wayne, who's 2 years older than me, he also played 3 sports. So for me, it was kind of like being Catholic and being, baptized and confirmed. It's like you got to play sports.
That's right. Totally. That's awesome.
So, I saw the love that they received, the accolades and all that. And so I was like, I want some of that. And so, from a young age, that was my dream. And so I, went on to play roller coaster ride journey in my college, but ended up at Florida State. And that's where I played. 1987 was my last season.
Yeah. So you often get the question, did you play with Dion Sanders prime time? And what do you say?
Yeah. So people do the math. They figure it out. They go, did you play with Dion Sanders? No, I did not. Dion Sanders played with me. He was a junior. I was a senior. So
I think that's so funny. And you were also coached by one of the most legendary coaches of all time, Bobby Bowden.
Yeah. Actually, I had 2 legendary coaches. One, my first place I landed was Georgia Southern, which just started their football program. And a guy by the name of Irk Russell. If those old school people remember Georgia, he was the guy that would butt heads without his helmet on with the Georgia players. And he became the head coach at Georgia Southern. And then when I transferred to Florida State, it was, Bobby Bowden.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just surrounded by famous people. Now it's Bob and Jake.
Yeah. Right. No, I don't know about the Jake part, but yeah. And run of Bob's, Bobby and Bob.
Yeah. And so, for those people, is it still on YouTube? Bart did an interview with Bobby Bowden right before he died. And it's really priceless.
I don't know. I don't know where it is. I know I have it privately. I don't know how public it went.
Okay, we'll try. We'll see if our folks can find it and put it in the show notes. So listeners, if it's there, it's there. Okay. Honestly, I feel like if I'm not careful, I'm going to just want to talk sports with you guys for a whole hour. And I'm not sure that's what our listeners are coming for. So let me just acknowledge my desire is to hear all the cool stories. And there are a lot of cool stories, and I'm sure we'll get into them. But the emphasis I think we're trying to get into in this series on athletics is the power of athletics, the healing that can come through athletics, the wounding that can come through athletics, the spiritual parenting, fathering, mothering, brothering, sistering that can come through athletics, and all the it's this wild thing that at some point somebody was like, hey, let's put this oblong oval thing and throw it around and tackle each other. And right? That's just wild to begin with. But then all these other layers of humanity start surfacing and coming up in athletics. And it is such a powerful thing in life. And so I love that we're doing this series because there are many, many people who play sports and it's a big part of their life. Some people, it's too much, right? It can be so much that can become an icon for you. It can replace your relationship with God. I think we've heard it, NFL competes with church attendance on Sundays. And people sometimes they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to go to church because that's how important this is in the world.
So does travel soccer for little kids.
Exactly. Yeah. In Canada, when we used to live there, it was hockey. People would be like, I don't know if I can I got a hockey game. Man. So Bart, I'm just going to throw out some big questions that maybe can get us going. What role did sports play in your life? Wounding, healing, development? I know it's such a big question. Just take it wherever you desire. Like, what was the role of athletics for you in your life?
Yeah, I would say growing up, everything, from the instability in our home. And again, seeing Bob and Wayne and the quote love that they received and me having a void there, I was like, I want that love, so really became, in hindsight, I see it really became an idol for me. My whole identity, everything wrapped up in it, and good, the bad, the indifferent. I didn't develop quickly. Bob and Wayne were more successful in their high school journeys and arguably in their college journeys as well. I just was constantly striving to go to the top level that I could. And so there was a, yeah, I would just say in summary of that, it became an idol for me. But it was also really good for me in my development. It gave me a lot of father figures, good and bad, including Bob, in my athletic journey. We got a lot of overlap in our stories, a lot of significant things overlapping for us. But yeah, that'd be the short of it.
When you say your career was less, I think that's understating it. Bart was probably the best athlete of all of us when he went to the what is it called? The pro day,
The combine.
Yeah, so
I didn't go to the combine, but when the pro scouts came,
yeah. he scored off the charts, like really high percentile on all those areas, and then ended up in Tampa Bay camp. And he would have gotten drafted probably if he hadn't gotten injured his senior year. So,
and if I played the right position, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, yeah.
Bart, you're alluding to something I think that's a really cool segue, which is like you mentioned several things. Bring us into them. So here's the things I heard. I had a rough story. So you're acknowledging wounds already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you brought them to sports. You were like, I saw all the love that Bob and Wayne were getting, and it became an idol. Talk us through, like, just so people can connect it, who maybe aren't familiar with language of what do you mean by idol? What do you mean you took it to sports? Like, what do you mean by those dynamics in your heart?
I think it's so, I was so driven to become, quote, somebody, because honestly, I felt like nobody, out of my brokenness and my wounding. I can get into some of that, but so my whole identity was wrapped. I wasn't just Bart. I was Bart the jock. And actually, unfortunately, Bart the dumb jock, because I didn't do well in school. And so early on, I determined this is really the only thing I'm good at. And so I put all my eggs in one basket, if you will, and it became my everything. And so my drive to be great was more than just, hey, I want to be good at something. I felt like my life depended on it.
Yeah. Okay. Bart, you're like, I know your story so well, and I know your testimony, so I'm trying to draw people into it. Dumb jock is a classic example of an identity statement. And I'm hearing you like crying out for the validation that all of us require and need. And because your story taught you, I can't get that maybe from dad. I know that's part of your story. And we long for these things. So you were like, well, then I will go get the love that I long for from success in athletics.
Yeah.
And then it became obsessive. Is that like you just constantly doing it? If you don't score or do well or have an off game, like you're depressed. Like, was that the story?
Very much, very much. And into my high school, that depression became severe because things fell apart into my senior year. And so, yeah, it was very much my everything, and because, like you said, the void of not having a dad. Our dad left when I was 5, Bob 13. And so, yeah, I really looking back to those phases of my life, I was very alone, isolated, afraid, and powerless, very vulnerable. And I didn't like that. So that was the sports became a way to kind of run away from that broken part of my identity. And again, because I saw Bob and Wayne, I now realize conditional love, but hey, love was love.
Yeah.
It's like, I wanted some of that. And so I started to get some recognition. I started to feel better about myself. And I started to quote, feel the love, and almost became addicted to that. And so it's like, so through all my roller coaster ride, from high school through college, it was taken from me so many times that I was never going to let it be taken from me, because I felt like a part of me was dying.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, from a family standpoint, one of the things we were good at is showing up at the games, and being present for each other at the games. So, all the way through high school, even when we were living in a different city, we'd go over and watch games. And my sister Margaret also ran track and played basketball, and we'd go over to watch with her. And so that was the support. Even when my dad came back into the family, it was to come to watch us play. And so it was a way of getting affirmation, getting presence, support, being seen, being valued. It was a lot of that.
Would you guys say that it was healthy or unhealthy or both, and why?
I would say it's both, but what would you say, Bart? I would say both. There's plenty of both.
Then, so break it down for us. Like, because sports can be such a healthy, awesome, valuable thing, and it can run a fine line of becoming, like you're describing, Bart, an idol. Like, from your guys' experience, Bart, you kick us off. What's the line? Like, what was that like for you guys? But because you're describing, like, as I hear it, if I put my psychologist hat on and I hear it and I go, man, that sounds like the primary contact you had with your dad was via athletics. And so that to me seems insecure, but maybe I don't hear the story right. And maybe I'm only hearing one side of it.
Yeah, no, I would say Bob would probably tell a different story than I would tell. Bob probably has more memories of my dad being at his games than I do my games. I only have one memory of my dad showing up at a game. It was when I was Little League Baseball and I was pitching, and I was so excited my dad was there. And I stunk it up. And I remember just feeling like my dad's not going to love me. It was just crazy thoughts. But yeah, I would say that connects to what you're saying. And then, but in credit to our mom, she was just doing everything she knew to do to make up for what was missing. And one of the areas that she felt was good and healthy for us was sports. It got us around male figures. It got us active. It got us so early on. I remember I was 9 years old, and she dropped me off for my first football practice, and they also did pictures that day. And I was excited to play, but then when she dropped me off, I didn't want to get out of the car. And she was, encouraging me, come on, Bart, this is good for you. You've been wanting to do this. And I was like, no, I don't want to go. And I remember breaking down crying in the car at 9 years old. And they did our team pictures, and there's still pictures somewhere, Bob, you probably remember it, where you could see that I'd been crying, and I look back on that, I'm like, well, maybe my heart was trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
Try baseball or basketball.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, Bob, what would you say? Like, in that balance?
Yeah, I think there was genuine love and care and support, and it was overblown in the area of sports. It was over focused on sports. That was one place that we all achieved well, and so it was one place to get affirmation, and it was, affirmation for what you do is not true affirmation. So it's, if you don't do well, then you don't receive affirmation. Or, we weren't bad with each other when we didn't do well. We were encouraging still, but internally, it's like my self-worth is dependent on how well I play. So, as I mentioned in our last podcast, when I got to college and I started to struggle in the performance, that really had a deep impact. And so Bart had that off and on because of injuries, because of situations. And so it was like this roller coaster of I'm worthy and I'm not worthy. I'm worthy and I'm not worthy.
Let's, I'm going to throw a question out I'm going to ask it and answer it myself first, and then maybe we can all pitch in. I can think about various times in my life where, and we use this language where like deep heart questions were at play. And I think that's kind of what we're alluding to. So am I lovable is a generic heart question that everyone asks, and a critical dynamic in formation, healing, just being at peace in life is becoming aware of where do I take that question? And one of the domains that a lot of times we take it is sports. And so what you just said there, Bob, was if I do well, then I'm lovable. So if I perform well on the pitch or the field or the court, then great, I'm lovable. If I have a bad game, I'm not lovable. And then we associate that with almost, it seems like our parents' excitement around stuff. Because I know I love sports, and my family's very similar to your guys' family. We weren't as successful as you guys in athletics. And yet, our pinnacle was high school. And it's that feeling of I lost, the crowd watched. So am I lovable to the crowd? Am I lovable to my coach? Am I lovable to my fellow players? What's going to happen when I get in the car? And we all know the horror stories. And sadly, sometimes those become incredible athletes, but their drivenness is actually out of fear. And then there's other folks who become incredible athletes, and it's like they're just God-given talent, and they're hungry, and they're like, oh, I knew my mom would love me no matter what. But these questions that we bring to athletics, and I think to all areas of life. So here's the thing I want to put out there. How is that done well? Because the question coming to a sport is going to happen. I think to ask somebody, don't ever bring your heart questions to sports. That's like almost impossible. It feels like an impossible thing. Maybe a perfectly integrated person could do that. And one of the things that I have to find the balance in, and so if I try to answer it myself, it would be, what's the good that I'm looking for, and how am I going to try to get it? So let me use a current example. So I do jujitsu. I am the old fat guy in every class. Let's just say that. So right out of the gate, I'm older than almost everybody else in the gym who's training, and I'm slower, I'm overweight, etc. And so in the midst of all of that, I have to be very careful about what goes on in my heart when I'm doing it, because I still have a competitive spirit, and I'm still bringing the question, am I good enough? Am I dangerous? Am I somebody to be reckoned with? All those deep heart dynamics are coming all the time. And one of the ways that I have to be very careful is, Jake, what does success look like here? And for me, it's extremely hard to redefine success as, hey, you showed up. You haven't quit. As opposed to, I'm crushing every person that walks through the door, right? That game, which is an internal game, is really hard. And boy, can I see all these questions flying around at the jiu-jitsu class of guys similar to my age who you can tell, like, they're like, I'm like, whoa, man, we probably need to have a talk off the mats because you've got a lot coming in. I call it the other guys who, they're young, and you look at them and you go, oh no, this guy's got dad issues. And he's looking at me like, and you're my dad, and I am about to work out my issues with my father on you. And so you can just feel all these layers and dynamics. So what has that been like for you? These questions of the heart, how have you managed it healthily? Like, just talk through that in your personal experience with regard to sports.
Yeah, I'll start by reflecting on what you said, Jake. You called yourself an old fat guy, so that's an identity statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, like dumb jock with Bart.
Yeah.
I'm just, yeah. And not a kind identity statement, is it?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's shaming.
Yeah, it's shaming. I feel like there's kind of a ground floor. The ground floor is there a ground floor beyond sports where I know that I'm loved and good enough and that I enjoy the sport for its own sake? That feels like a healthy place of identity. And then this next healthy place of identity, at least for me, is there's something about sports that brings, we talked about this last time, that brings something out of me. It's like the challenge that allows me to experience my masculinity, my personhood, the joy, just the thrill of movement and activity and strength and all of those things. That all feels really positive to me. Where it gets negative, as we were talking about, is when it becomes a sense of, rather than I'm a beloved son of the Father, or I'm loved by the people around me, it becomes this adulation. I remember one time doing a witness and saying, I spent my life trying to be admired rather than loved. Right? Like if I'm a good athlete or a good student, I could be admired. And that doesn't touch your heart. It's all from a distance. As opposed to, I want to be loved. I want an intimate love. That's what we all long for. So I put it that way. Bart?
Yeah. And I would just adding to what both of you are saying, I would say it's living from your heart, living, from a secure place of knowing who you are, which is easier said than done, especially when you're young, growing up. And then the overflow of that, is just the beauty and the joy of sports. I mean, we all know, and we can all speak to the journey there of all the pure and good, that has come out of sports. I don't know where I'd be if I didn't play sports. All the good things that build up, your self-esteem in a positive way, or the places of affirmation that are good, that aren't just conditional. Feeling like, hey, look, I'm good at something, or maybe I'm not so good at it, but this is a nice challenge, and I can grow as a person. I think there's a healthy part of competing. There's also an unhealthy part of that as well. But I think there's a healthy part. Honestly, in a lot of ways, I would love to see the church incorporate some of these, some of these mindsets to live into the victory of Jesus, for example. There's a lot of positive that come from sports, and the camaraderie, the brotherhood, for women, the sisters, but all of that is, I think, very healthy.
Yeah, I want to just talk, because I know there's a big part of your story, is also the culture around sports and the adulation of others. Like in college, you were a good-looking guy, good athlete, and all the women drawn to you, and the good and the bad in that also.
Yeah. There's a lot of attention that comes. That's not all good. Just speaking of culture in general, I think we'd all agree with this, but you look at the successful teams in any sport, and it goes back to the culture. There's so much made about the talent, which talent is only one part of it, but the culture. When you have a good, healthy culture and a good unity, a good chemistry, a lot can be accomplished. But the opposite is also true when you have a bad culture. And like you said, Bob, there's definitely a mix in college sports. And I think the higher the level, especially today, the more toxic that can possibly become. And if you have an identity issue and you have a deep need to be affirmed, and you're getting affirmed in all the external attributes, that can be destructive. And that certainly was part of my journey of just kind of, again, finding identity, not only in being Bart the jock, or as we said, the dumb jock, but, Bart the ladies' man. That became a title that teammates gave me. And I found I was getting a lot of attention for that, and yeah, it became very unhealthy.
Man, it's just interesting as I'm trying to just listen to the threads of what we're saying. I can hear so much of identity in everything we're saying, and the pursuit of identity, and then these core basic, Bob, and both of us, we all do this event called Holy Desire. I can hear all these holy desires that are brought to sports, and it could be these holy desires are handled really well in sports or not handled well. And then Bart, you're right there bringing up this concept of culture. I heard this definition of culture, at least I think it was this, maybe I'm butchering it, but culture is what you pay attention to and what you reward. That's what drives culture. What you pay attention to, what you reward. It's kind of similar, but so Bart, give us an example. Like you played high level athletics. What's an example of a good culture and what was an example of a bad culture or an unhealthy culture and what was the effect on that on the heart?
Yeah, I would say giving credit back to what we were saying earlier, Bobby Bowden. He would we had 3 practice fields and then we had a big oak tree in the middle. And before every practice and often after, he would sit the team down under the shade tree, which we needed in Tallahassee, Florida. And he would just talk to us, as our head coach, but sometimes even as a father. And oftentimes he would share his faith. And at the time, I was not living my faith. And me and my friends would kind of smirk and kind of make fun of things. But he was instilling to me a great foundation that created a great culture. And while we may not have all received it at the time, so Bob mentioned earlier that I got to interview him, went to his house, got to introduce my son to him, which was cool, and got to interview him. It turned out to be 6 months before I did a year before and then again 6 months before. And one of the things that I said to him was, Coach Bowden, I'd imagine you're aware of this, but you were a father figure to many of the guys on our team. And he said, well, Bart, you probably know better than I do. And I said, well, I know many guys that played with me and since that a lot of them credit you as a father figure. And a lot of them, like myself, did not grow up with a father. But you were a father figure. And he had a tear in his eye. I could tell it really touched him. And I asked him, the other question I asked him, I said, so Coach Bowden, how did you get away with praying with us? They're talking about Christ and praying with us. And we'd pray the Our Father all the time together. And I said, how did Florida State say that was okay with you? He says, honestly, I didn't ask.
Nice.
He said, that's what I'm about. That's what I want my legacy to be, is that I did what God called me to do. And so that created a great culture. So that'd be an example of a good culture that unfortunately I didn't adhere to at the time, but did later and thanked him for that. The bad culture would be all the external things that can come with that level of college athletics, whether it be the fans, the boosters, the ladies, the parties, and then if you get too much ego from certain players, and then other players, they're not getting, quote, the love, that can create some conflicts and tensions, which today I think it's a recipe for disaster. I got a little bit of a lens into that with my son playing. That's what I would say.
Yeah, my mind's going in 2 different directions. We talked a little bit about Dion Sanders, but you talked about what a great teammate he was.
Yeah.
Just talk about that just in terms of his work ethic and his.
Yeah. So, Dion, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about Dion, and, some of them are merited. He's out there outspoken. But even back then he was much more outspoken. He would.
That's hard to believe.
he would have the big gold. He'd come out of the locker room with his little talking dummy, and he would, he just would, always a show with Dion, always a show. And we would just laugh about it. But to a lot of people, it just seemed like he was absolutely arrogant. And I'm not going to argue that, but he was actually a great teammate. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't do a lot of the things a lot of the guys did. I'm not going to say he was a Christian at the time. He wouldn't either. He was later. But he would be exempt from spring football practice, because he would either play baseball or run track, and sometimes both. And he would often, after a track meet or a baseball game, would just come out, throw on his shoulder pads and get working. He would and he was a great teammate. So my nickname was Cowboy, his was Primetime. And so even in the games, he would be like, okay, Primetime, you get pressure on the quarterback and get ready to block because I'm going to take it to the house. It's just like he was always incorporating everybody, and yeah, he was a great teammate.
You had said he practiced harder than anybody else on the team, right?
Yeah, he worked.
Something I'm noticing, and I'm trusting that this is going to be a blessing of the Spirit. I'm going to take our conversation in an intentional direction and almost ask us to work through something and do some integration with some concepts. So here's what I mean. Each one of us, competitive athletes, and there's a unique dynamic that we're all men. We have all played sports and we've all coached sports. And so I want to ask us to, I don't know, we'll see how this flows out, but we all know, we're talking about identity, we're talking about sports, and we're all men. So I'm thinking of the 4 primary identities of a man: son, brother, husband, father. And I'm wondering if we can chat through those with regard to athletics and the healthy and unhealthy dynamics that come up in each one of those. And I'm really looking forward to father, because there's a lot like, how do you love your children through athletics from a posture of a father? So I'm gonna hold that one obviously to the end. So does the concept make sense? These identity things, we're talking about, we bring those to sports, but we're all men. Let's talk through some of what that looks like in sports. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So if we start with son, so if we go, son is the healthy, orphan is the unhealthy. I think we've already alluded to it, but maybe just give us another chance to go around. Like, when I think about athletics and sports as a son, I think just like what you're talking about, Bart, like the opportunity to be in a situation where you're getting lots of contact with father figures. And if those father figures are good, like a Bobby Bowden, man, you can feel deeply loved and affirmed as a son. And what does that mean? Like, I'm seen, I'm blessed, I'm part of something that this father figure leads. I know that I'm safe. He sets out standards that are based on what is good. And if I adhere to those standards, I'm praised. You know, there's like this economy almost that's acknowledged. And I know for me, like, I can think about, there was a coach experience I had that, well, sorry, I'm already jumping to Orphan. I should probably acknowledge the distinction that was about. So that's an example of the son, like the beauty and benefit of being loved as a father. Actually, in jujitsu, I've experienced a lot of fathering, even though I'm often one of the older guys in the room. And what that looks like is, you don't know what to do. That's okay. I'm not going to shame you. I'm going to show you. And I would remember rolling with a guy, and he was easily, late 20s. And we're sparring and I'm doing something and I go, damn, and I made a mistake, and I got upset at myself. And I was like, gosh, I keep screwing up. And he was like, whoa, there's no screw ups. That's not what we do. You're learning, and that's okay. You just keep drilling it. And I remember stepping back for a second and going, man, that guy just fathered me right there. He paused and corrected me. And there was the gift of the sport helping me have permission to grow. So that would be an example of son. Orphan, I remember going to a practice. Basketball was the primary sport I played in high school. And so we have sprints at the end of class. I hated sprints. I would start to get anxious. Actually, I would start to, all my childhood stuff started coming out, pressure. I'm afraid I'm going to get overwhelmed. I have this almost anxiety response to running sprints. And so it gets to the end, the time to run sprints, and I start basically having a panic attack because I don't want my heart rate to get high, and I'm just afraid of the experience. And my coach tears into me, starts making fun of me in front of everybody. And it's at the point where, am I going to let my emotion come out? Oh no, because that would actually send me, now my brother category would be ruined. And so you just shut up and you take it. But the coach like shamed me. And so what that taught me is, mistakes aren't okay. I don't care what your experience is. Do what I want you to do no matter what. It's like dictatorship. And so that wounds in this. And now I'm feeling like an orphan with him. I don't have a loving father. I have this dictator who doesn't really care about me. I'm on my own. What about for you guys? Son, orphan in regards to sports. What comes up for you?
I would put it in this: fear versus love.
Yeah.
It's so much of the coaching style when I played was fear-based, and fear kind of motivated you. You didn't want to lose that thing that you really wanted. And so that would be kind of that derogatory, kind of fear-based, shame-based, like you're saying. I hated it. But you didn't have a choice. And so if you want to play, you've got to adhere to it, versus love-based, which I think that's becoming more and more of a philosophy today in coaching. At least some people I know, they're Christians, so maybe that's why. But just that love-based, motivating, like you're saying, affirming you, building up. Hey, it's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake. We're learning. We're growing. It's okay. I love you. You're going to do well. And I see that really, really draws something out. And yeah, I was going to say about my son, but I'll see if that comes later.
Yeah, I just hate watching even in Little League sports, just coaches reaming kids out, and it's just like, it's cringeworthy, and I didn't have coaches like that, and I'm really grateful, but I had coaches who really believed in me, and coaches who were in fear of doing something wrong. And I performed really well and wasn't self-conscious and just excelled under the coaches who really believed in me. And I got caught in my head and self-conscious and performed poorly in coaches that were coming out of fear. And their fear wasn't the angry kind of, that, but it was like, you got to do this exactly right. And you got to do this exactly right. And we don't want to let this happen. We don't want to let this happen. And that just was horrible for me and my personality. I had other teammates who could deal with that. I couldn't. It's like I needed to do everything right if they were doing it. And I started to become afraid of messing up rather than just confident no matter whether I messed up or not. I had what it takes to play.
Bob, what was your high school coach's name that you loved, and what would he say to you?
I had a couple of great ones, but Coach Glazier, you're talking about, and
yeah,
he said, "Yeah, I can't even do the voice anymore. You're my star."
That's amazing. That was his line to you.
Yeah,
yeah,
and you still remember it, obviously.
Yeah, I have great power. I ended up getting injured in my fourth game, but I had 2 interceptions for touchdowns by the time I got injured in the fourth game. I played really well under him. And then the next set of coaches in another school were great coaches, and I played really well. And
wow. So what I hear us describing is the power, what happens in the son's heart in athletics, that sonship identity, it actually releases you into your gifting.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
At some point, sports have a genetic component. You can't get away from that. God designed you in certain ways, and that's one of the cool thing about team sports is in a big enough team, if the sport is, what would I say, like a robust or complex enough. Like football is a great example. Big guys got a place, fast guys got a place, smart guys have got a place. Like it's cool. I think sports like that are really fun.
Yeah.
Really quick, just let's go do this round one more time. I want to ask the both of you. Bart, you mentioned, I think that's brilliant, love versus fear. And I can imagine, I'm thinking of the people who are listening, who are coaches, or people who aren't totally bought in. And here's the question I want to ask. How do I motivate them if I can't make them afraid? Because I could imagine, you can hear the voice, well, we're not out here to just be pansies and, rub each other's backs. And what are we doing? Like, how am I going to get the guy to perform? And is there another option other than shame to get people to excel?
Absolutely. It's empowering, empower them, pull out what's inside of them, empower them, get them to believe in themselves. Now, is there a point where we all need to be pushed? Yeah. We're not going to push ourselves as much as a coach is going to push us. So we need to be pushed. We need someone who's going to push us beyond where we want to go. And sometimes that might be some tough love, but they don't have to shame us and condemn us and fear us and, because they just beat us down. Where I see success is when they're empowered to become who God created them to be.
Yeah. But the one for me that jumps up as you're saying that is motivation. It was one of my, I was very easily motivated. And so when a coach gave me the locker room talk and a good one,
Yeah.
I could do things that I couldn't do before, because it was like, and literally, like, here, I mean the spiritual connotation, I was inspired.
Yes.
Like, something came in me that gave me this movement of heart, and I wanted to do for them this mission that we were all on. And it's like, that's one of the most exhilarating experiences.
Yes. I wanted to play my part because I'm inspired and motivated to do so.
Yeah. Bob, anything you'd add there?
No, I think you guys captured it. I didn't have I can't remember a good locker room talk all my life. I mean, that wasn't what motivated me. So I don't know if I even paid attention to it, but what motivated me was just somebody that had confidence in me.
Wow. That's powerful. Okay, let's go on to brother. There's a brother dynamic that goes on within sports, and it's not as clean as son, orphan. So maybe there's the, good brother, healthy brother, unhealthy brother. Man, and I think so as men, so obviously we're kind of narrowing in on this as men. This is one of those dynamics that has a fine line and requires sensitivity, because when we all play cornhole together, there is a lot of brotherly fun that's happening. Especially us. And what I love about it is there's permission and freedom to egg on in a playful way, but I also feel like we're very sensitive to the line, and we're always, trying to be attentive to the other person. And, if one of us was in a bad mood and, you egg a little bit and you go, oh, that wasn't the reaction I'm used to, we would adapt or check in, because the heart of our brother matters more than my winning or my succeeding. I would actually feel like, Bob, if I crushed you in cornhole, that, and it's let's for some reason, let's say that you were triggered, the enemy was attacking you in it. I would not feel like I wouldn't feel proud of that win if you lost in the midst of it. And so there's, to me, the brotherly dynamic that I think is healthy. And another healthy dynamic is we also are very willing to beat the other one. So that's also, I think, a really healthy dynamic. I'm not going to hold back to handhold you in perpetuity. There's this brotherly thing, I think, that's such a gift to the masculine heart. So you guys are obviously brothers. Like, what comes, thoughts around this category, healthy, unhealthy in sports?
Yeah, I think the fact that we're brothers and of different ages, that it could be support and less competition. I was more competitive with my older brother in that, but that's also very healthy, that competitiveness. And I just loved the fellowship of sports. I didn't like it when it got to be the put downs in the locker room stuff. And some of that is healthy teasing and affection, but then some of it is just perverse. But being on a team with other guys, I mean, those were some of my best friends always growing up. And it was such a bond, even now, when we play, it's just such a bond. It's like when kids play together, they have a bond with each other. And when adults play with each other, they have a bond with each other. There's just something about that that's really powerful. And it just becomes negative when it becomes competitive in a comparison way or critical way, put down way, that kind of stuff. That would be the negative.
Yeah. Bart, what about you?
Yeah. Oh, I'd say, first of all, watching the two of you play cornhole is a lot of fun. Because as you said earlier, Jake, you know how to tease Bob, and that's fun to watch.
Yeah.
And linebacker Bob comes out when he plays cornhole.
He wants to win, and I love it.
Yeah, he loves it. I love the competitiveness. I'm not as competitive as the two of you as far as being good enough to be. I am competitive, but I in that realm, the two of you are really fun to watch because it goes back and forth, and then you bring Christopher and some others in, and I love to observe it. I love to get in the mix of it too, and if I can ever pull out some wins, that's great. So yeah, that camaraderie, brotherhood that you're talking about I agree with you. And as you're saying that about brotherhood, I think back to the football days too. Is I ask guys that have played, what do you miss? And what the majority of them say is the camaraderie. They miss the camaraderie. the brotherhood, that bond that you form, especially football in the trenches at a high level. It's like you feel like you're in a battle, and you know that the guy next to you has your back. And there's not much in life that duplicates that. I'd imagine the military does, but I don't have that experience. But sports, knowing that your brother has your back, and while we might go at it, and we might, but when it's game time, they got your back, and that is awesome. And yeah, I do see some of that as you're describing at some of the events, and particularly you're describing with the cornhole, is some of that gets relived. Let's tease and have some fun, but at the end of the day, I have your back. I'm not out to wound you.
If I could use an example of that that's close to your home, Bart, is Caitlin Clark in the women's basketball, and the jealousy of the other players and the ways that they're demeaning her. But she's now got a teammate who was Hannah, your daughter's teammate, Sophie Cunningham, who's come kind of as a support. She's gotten in a lot of trouble from it, but come as a support. And just like you talk about having your back, it's like, I have your back no matter what's going to happen here. I'm going to be with you and be here for you. And it's not just you fighting this battle, it's me fighting it with you. And that's really powerful.
Yeah. So just fill in the story there. That's pretty cool. So Bart, your daughter, she played college basketball. Yeah. And her teammate now plays with Caitlin Clark.
Yeah. So Hannah, who's my oldest, played basketball at Missouri. And her teammate, classmate, and best friend is Sophie Cunningham, Sophie Cunningham now plays with Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever. And Sophie Cunningham really just this last 2 weeks has really kind of blown up on social media because of all that Bob's talking about, the harassing of Caitlin Clark, and who's kind of the face of the WNBA now, and in my opinion, cleaning it up. But there's a lot of jealousy, a lot of issues, and even the refs aren't really covering and protecting her. And so Sophie, who was some form of martial arts growing up, black belt.
She was Taekwondo at 6, Jake.
Ooh. Was Taekwondo?
Black belt.
Black belt.
Whoa.
Her and her sister, Lindsay. Whoa. And so she took it upon herself at the end of the game to get this girl that had been getting Caitlin Clark for years. And it just blew up because a lot of people took two sides of it, but a lot of people are taking the side of, finally, someone has Caitlin Clark's back. And that's Sophie. Sophie is, I could say a lot of things about Sophie. I know her well. But yeah, so that's her. And Hannah says, as a teammate, you want her as a teammate. You don't want to be on the other side going against her. But even in practice, she's not a lot of fun because they had some issues and they were roommates, so anyway.
Well, there's this is maybe one of the, there's so many examples. This is a really good example of where the kingdom of God is made manifest so clearly in athletics. This unity and purpose for a common goal, common mission. We win together, we lose together. There's so much I feel like the church in her operational side could learn from athletics and how to be a good teammate, and what especially even amongst the presbyterate, I don't know if you guys find this. So this is, maybe I'm going to the weeds for a second, because I know we have 2 more topics to get through and not a ton of time. Oh man. Okay. The Lord must have I completely forgot what I was about to say. So, all right, he's like, yep, you don't have time. Don't go down the weeds. Okay. So final 2 topics. I don't, help me out here. I don't actually know how to integrate husband into sports off the top of my head. So I'm just going to pause there. Can you guys see how would the identity of husband be brought into athletics? Can you see something? Father's obvious. The other 2 are clear. Can you see it? I can't see it.
Well, I met my wife when she was a cheerleader and I was an athlete.
Okay, there we go. All right.
And just that kind of support always. She always had, as a cheerleader, she was always a cheerleader for my activities as a spouse.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that fits. And then on the negative side of that is kind of Bart's experience in college, which is, just trying to live out that identity to experience love. And then where it brings you in terms of into negative spiritual consequences.
Okay, let me throw out a crazy concept. Is it? I'm hearing a theme, which is the meta kingdom of God principle here is we are all made for union.
Yeah.
And sports has that capacity to draw you into union. Obviously not, we don't mean particularly in a sexual sense, but I've never thought of it like this. But Bart, your story and your experience is one of the most common narratives that surrounds high-level athletics, which is high-level athlete wanting to have union. And I've never thought of it before, but man, they seem to almost go, there's the stories of the Wilt Chamberlain stories and the Magic Johnson stories of these guys sleeping with countless number of women. And I'm like, what is up with that? Like what's going on? That dynamic of, performing well on the field, excellence, whatever, all that stuff's going on in athletics in union. I can't see it totally, but boy, it sure seems like it's there. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd say connecting this to what Bob said, I think when you're a little kid, you were trying to perform and do well and succeed, and you wanted the brothers to accept you, wanted the coach to affirm you and receive you, but you also wanted the fans to see you and recognize you, and you wanted the cheerleader to see you.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that just matures into a lot of disordered desire.
Yeah. It's very good. Okay. Let's go to father. Now it's hard that when you talk about son, you indirectly talk about father. So we've kind of done that a little bit, but I want us to zoom in and kind of hold this well. Each of us have a lot of experience with coaches, but we are all coaches in our own right, if I use that term loosely. We have all poured into other people the power of a coach as a father. We talked about it with Bobby Bowden, et cetera. I think maybe what comes up for you in this category, but maybe more importantly, what is important here? We have a lot of years of experience in this domain. I would love to bless our listeners with some ideas, concepts, feedback about how to be a good father in athletics. So here's one of the ones that I'm going to reference another storyline. So again, jiu-jitsu is the current sport I'm in a lot. There's some pretty interesting books out there about the Gracie family, who's considered the founding family of modern jiu-jitsu that evolved out of judo. And it is really interesting because they were tons of, it's such a messed up story. They were polygamists, and it's just a wild story. But one of the things that they always said was there was their father who started jiu-jitsu, these guys who write the books, had these mantras, which were, you can't quit. Quitting isn't an option. We always love you if you lose. And that line or that sentiment really struck me as these guys knew I'm not allowed to quit, but it is okay to lose. And I thought, what a securing, interesting dynamic. So it's too hard. I don't want to do it. Lazy, not allowed. But, oh, you tried your best and you lost? Oh, I love you. And so there's stories of they would get more ice cream when they lost, but didn't quit than when they won. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting fathering dynamic there of affirming them. And these guys grew up to be the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioners you could argue ever. So that's just a storyline that I think is just interesting about how do you handle loss? How do you handle identity? What do you reward, et cetera? So what comes up for you guys with regard to being a good father, particularly within athletics?
Yeah, I'm thinking about Pope Leo's homily when he spoke to the group at the White Sox game. And he was talking a lot about that. He says, one of the great values of sport, it teaches us how to lose, not just how to win. And it's like, that sounds like convoluted because nobody goes into sports to lose, but everybody gets to a place in sports where you lose, right? And if you're not playing at a high enough level. And so how do you handle loss in sport is how you handle loss in life, and if I reject myself when I lose, and I'm going to reject myself in the ways that I lose in life. If I can be loved by a father when I lose, as you're describing, I think of a couple of stories for me as a coach and a father. I coached my brother Wayne's team for one summer before I went to play. And I still have a guy who was one of Wayne's teammates that calls me coach. I only coached him for 6 months or 6 weeks. But what I was able to do is I was able to pass on what I had received, which is coaches believing in me. And I was coaching linebackers. I was a linebacker. And I helped him believe in himself. And he really excelled in a year. He kind of came into himself. And so just the joy of that as a father, being able to pass on what you've received in a good way to the next generation. And then soccer was not one of my sports until I was 28 years old. And I just began to play recreationally. But it was around those times when my daughters were getting to that age of playing. So I coached them for years in soccer, and I wasn't a very good coach, but I knew enough to be able to teach these little kids and created a culture. And we had a really, really good teams. But now watching them married, their husbands had played soccer. Now all my grandchildren are soccer players. And my one son-in-law has coached all of them through the time. The other ones are more swimmers.
And they're good.
And they're really good. Yeah. Now now we have college. We'll have 4 of them next year playing college soccer. And they're good players, and just to see the pouring in that happens over generations,
Beautiful.
Yeah, I would say I'm thinking about it in relation to my kids, so, my 4 kids, they all played sports at young age. Well, my second, though she was 6 foot, we thought she would play volleyball, didn't like sports. She's into fashion. And so we decided we still love her too. But my other 3, my oldest played Missouri. My third, Kaylee, played 4 sports in high school, then played several club level in college. And then my son plays college football. And so I wanted to raise them different from the wounded places that we already talked about. And so I did not push them into sports. Now, they might have felt that from me in my life and my story. Obviously, might have told that. But obviously, I'm a very intense fan, which is a problem Bob has seen. But I wanted to just find out what was in their heart. What did God write in their heart? What was their dream? What was their desire? And it was wide open, as far as I was aware. But when my oldest at 10 said, I want to play college basketball, I was surprised. I said, well, if that's the case, then our level of preparation is going to be different than if you just wanted to play for the sake of fun, because to get there, that's a whole nother thing. So from a young age, she wanted to be pushed and to grow. So I coached her, but always affirmed her and always loved her. But I pushed her, especially as she got older. And one little fun story that all my kids remember and my wife watching is in our, out by a driveway going one-on-one with her for basketball. So I'm 6'4" and about, 260. And she was tall and lean, 6'2", and very lean. And I was going against her, practicing outside and pushing her pretty hard. And she stopped and she said, Dad, I'm never going to play against anyone your size. I said, Hannah, you don't know that. You said you wanted to play college basketball. And she said, Dad, I'm never going to play anyone against your side. Well, sure enough, she did. She played against 2 girls that were bigger than me, that were both like top picks in WNBA. And she held her own. And so I came back to her and I said, you can thank me for that.
She actually did. She actually defended them better than anybody that ever played those girls.
She did well. She blocked both their shot, which she's proud of.
Awesome.
But then with my son, I've tried to just build him up and affirm him, find out what's in his heart. From an early age, he wanted to play. He played 3 sports. And I did not want him to play football, honestly. I did not want him in that culture. I kept pushing him over towards baseball or basketball. He liked those too, but football is what I knew early. That was what was going to be natural for him. So he now plays college football. And the culture is really challenging. But back to the fathering role, I've shared my story with him. He's heard my story. He's heard the flaws, the mistakes I made. He also heard about how I encountered God the Father and how my life was transformed. And he was raised in that. And so we talk very openly, and he talks very openly about the temptations and the struggles and the things that come at him, the mistakes he makes and the things he does. But I'm fathering him in the midst of that, and the critical things of coaches, the affirmations of coaches, going through injury. And I'm just try to be there with him and father him, and to love him in all my flaws and brokenness and imperfections. My goal is to try to represent the Father's love. To connect this back, if I could, to things with the church, I would love to see, I miss as an athlete, and maybe you guys could see this as well. I miss three things that I would love to see the church incorporate. The camaraderie, which we spoke of, like your brother has your back, your sister has your back, camaraderie, having a vision, having something that you're willing to lay your life down for. I picture Jesus with the disciples, man. I just having that common vision and just being willing to be in the trenches, and going at it. I think sometimes we taste that a little bit at some of our events, but I would love to see the church incorporate that and to really live into that, the positive parts of athletics.
Yeah, as you say that's really the early church. And then Jesus was that father coach, and they had the brotherhood, the camaraderie, and the church was the bride. And
he laid his life
down. Yeah.
Yeah, that is I love this as a landing point, because athletics on their own, they can become shallow quickly. But when they're infused with, kingdom principles, kingdom mindset, they're one of the best training grounds for saints.
Yeah.
It's a really cool, beautiful thing.
Yes, I agree.
Bart, thanks, man, for coming on. This has been awesome. And I feel like I know so much. We just scratched the surface with regard to everything that we could have talked about with you and whatnot. But one of the things I want to highlight, listeners, if you want to hear more of Bart's story, he has YouTube videos and other things that you can access as well. Bart does retreats. So Church on Fire is one of the things that he does. And so we're going to put all the links to Bart's ministry and his world so that you can have access to him if you want to bring him into a parish or ask him to do other things for your community and whatnot. So Bart, thanks, man. Thanks for being with us. Yeah. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was fun, Jake, Bob. I think I'll see you guys again soon.
I think probably.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. Listeners, thanks so much for being with us. God bless you. We'll talk to you again soon.